Well, thinking back to the school days, what, like within school, were some of your favorite things or favorite memories?
Band. I love band. Played alto sax, and I just love band. And I liked band until one time we had to have a. They had a band concert on 4th of July at Ellsworth, and we were in this little park place right on Main Street. And the drummer didn't show up. And the band instructor, his name was Danielson, he said, Lois, he said, the band or the drummer isn't here. And he said, I've got enough saxophones. He says, can you take over the drums? I had never played a drum in my life. And the guy, one of the kids next to me said, oh, it's really easy. Just 1, 2, hit it. 3, 4, hit it. And I know I had to have been off because I had never done that in my life. And I'd hate to hear what it sounded like. And it was a big bass drum. So, but we got through it. But no, I like school. I always had, it was a lot of fun for me. And pulled a lot of pranks with some of the other kids in there.
We need to hear about some of those.
What?
We need to hear about some of those.
Old Gordon Meester, he was one of my favorite, well, there was a few favorite guys in school, but he was my girlfriend's brother. And I had spent a lot of time at their house, you know, just all of us getting together. And we had this one teacher, and she was always picking on us. She didn't think we were very nice. So when she went out one time, why we put a, and this is awful, we put a chewed wad of gum on her chair seat. But she had it coming. She accused us of being in the bar during noon hour, and we didn't. We were in the cafe for hamburgers. So, anyway, that was Gordon's fault. He put the idea in my head. He chewed the gum.
So you're saying you stuck it on?
Yeah,
What'd you stick it on?
on her chair.
Oh. So she sat down in it?
Yes. She always stood up when she was telling us what to do. And once in a while she'd sit down, but she'd sit down as we left class. So when she had her back turned to the blackboard and she was busy writing, why, I was about 3 typewriters behind, and I just snuck up there quick and put it in there, and I was probably in the 9th grade.
So tell me about your school. Where did you go to school, and how many kids were
Ellsworth,
there?
Minnesota. And there were about, I think we graduated with 12, but there had been like 14 or 15 when we started. And some moved away, and a couple of them dropped out to get married in the junior year. And
Where was the school at, and what did it look like? And
Ellsworth, Minnesota.
in town?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, I lived only half a block away. And that was nice. And we didn't have any really hot lunches. You had a place where they might have soup, but you had to bring your sandwiches or anything like that. You wanted nothing like they have now. Most of them brought a sack lunch or something. And yeah, no, school was fun for me. If there was one thing in life I wanted to do over, it would be go back to school. So,
To relive it the way it was?
yeah, I might change a few things,
Like?
but I'd probably study a little more. But I don't know. No, I just really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the kids, got along with everybody, and just had a good time in school. And you know, school was so different now. Like Gordon and some of those guys, they'd come in with their guns and set the guns in the superintendent's office right around the corner. And then after school, why, they would pick up their guns and go hunting squirrel or rabbit or whatever, and that was their supper.
Mm.
So, you can shut that off for a while.
Okay.
Well, you better ask me questions.
Go ahead. You're talking about Ruth?
Well, Mildred and Olive and Dad were out doing chores, and Mildred found out that she had a little bucket and she filled it partway full of water, and she'd take it and swing it and throw it over to me, and I could try and catch it. Well, we did that a few times, and Ruth came and stood underneath there. And about that time, that bucket just stopped in midair and it just dumped all over her. And she screamed and she cried, and here came Olive. So Mildred and I caught heck, really. But we told her not to go under there, but she did.
Mm.
So that was another time we got in trouble. We got in a lot of trouble because of her.
What was the age difference there?
She was 2.5 years younger than I am, and I was 3.5 years younger than Mildred. So
Okay.
it's just enough to have that little pesky little sister always in the way or doing something. I had to watch out for her. But
So now tell me when you lived with whom, because you started off in the country, with your mom and dad, and your mom passed away when you were 21 days old. And then what happened?
then my grandmother took me.
Right away.
Yeah.
Okay.
She took me and took me to raise, and she was like I said, only about half a mile, 3/4 of a mile away. And I guess, and I didn't know, well, I kind of knew it at the time that it happened, but my dad had wanted me back when I was about 3 years old, and she wouldn't give me back then. And the only thing I can remember about what she said was that Olive couldn't take care of her own. How could she take care of another one? And I must have been about 3.5 years old at the time. And I had never really thought about it again, but then after we were married, why, my dad told Hurley that he had wanted me back and Grandma wouldn't give me back then.
Hmm.
And it was probably a mixed blessing. I did go over there on weekends a lot of times, or after school, maybe a few hours, and I could walk home. And
What about Mildred? Where was she?
she stayed with Dad, and
Okay.
Dad got a housekeeper at first. And then Olive's parents were neighbors. And after 2 housekeepers that Dad had had, and they didn't work out or something, why, Olive was like 16, and then Olive's mother and Dad said, well, she could keep house for my dad. Well, then that's how my dad ended up marrying her, and that's how it worked out.
And so she had Ruth and
She just had Ruth.
just Ruth. Okay.
Mhm.
I was trying to remember.
Yeah, she just had Ruth.
Okay. And so how did you feel about that, having a stepmom?
Well, my earliest recollections were of seeing, the first time I can remember even being at my dad's house with Olive was when Ruth was born. I can remember, and I would have been 2.5, and I can remember looking in the buggy and seeing this baby. And I can remember my grandmother telling me to get away from there and leave her alone. But I was so enthralled with this baby because that was the only one I had seen, And yeah, that was real plain. I can remember seeing her, and I wanted to touch her so bad, but I didn't dare. And I can't even remember, I guess Mildred was there, but see, I don't even remember Mildred being there. And I know she was, and there was other people there that night. That must have been shortly after she got home from the hospital.
And then later, did you go and stay with your dad, or you always lived with your
I
dad?
always lived with my grandmother,
Okay.
always. But I would go weekends
Okay.
a lot of times over to my dad's, or maybe a few days if my grandma was going to go someplace, then I would go stay there. Or else I would go to Walter and Leon's, who lived 1/4 of a mile away, my aunt and uncle, my dad's brother.
Okay.
So
So when you were real young, you mentioned one of your first memories was seeing Ruth in the bassinet. What other earlier memories do you have when you
well,
were real young?
that was the first memory. The other one that stands out in my mind real plain, and that was, we always, no matter how little we were, we had to go along and work, and they had to have lots of patience with us because I know we couldn't have done a good job, but we always had to go whole thistles out of the potato rows and things like that. And one towards the evening, my Alva said, all right, she says, we're going to go hoe thistles. Come on, you girls. So, and we had, Dad would have cut the hoe off for us so that it was easy for us to handle. And we went down, and pretty soon we saw the old pickup coming down the lane. And he opened the door, and my dad had been drinking heavily. And at that time, we had a hired man. And when we finally saw him, he had taken his shoe and sock off, and he had a gun. And he was going to shoot himself.
In the foot?
No, he was going to, he had his shoe
Oh,
and
I see.
sock off.
To pull
And he
the
had
trigger.
the gun
In
pointed
front
up.
of you all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were there, and things weren't easy for Olive either. And Olive said, you kids get in the cornfield, hurry up. So we got in the cornfield, but we could see. And she went up and got her brother, who was helping Dad at the time with his farm work. And he's the one that came down and talked Dad out of doing anything then. Hike got the gun away from my dad and took him back up, and I suppose put him to bed, I don't know, but he had a drinking problem, and he would disappear for maybe 2-3 days, and then about every 6 weeks, in between he'd be fine. But it was enough that it scared us. Every time he left, we'd have that sick feeling in our stomach. Is he going to come home okay? And another time was when, and I don't know why it scared me so bad, but another time, it was in the wintertime, and I was waiting for Melvin to come pick me up from Dad's. And I saw this car at the end of the lane, and he couldn't get up any further because it was all snow. So I went down, walking down there, and I thought, well, Melvin is there to pick me up, to take me home. And I got down to the car, and I saw it was my dad, and he was passed out over the steering wheel. And it scared me, so I just screamed and screamed, and the hired man, his name was Bud Dietz at the time, came in to see what was wrong. And so drinking never had a real appeal for me at all. I saw what it did, and it just, I didn't want any part of it.